come the Hawks, the mighty Blackhawks.
Guided it along, remarkably kept alive by Keith, and Keith turns with it now. Keith got it on Teravainen, score! Teravainen, and the game is tied!
All the Hawks, here come the Hawks, here comes the Hawks, here comes the Hawks, here comes the Hawks, here comes the Hawks. Here they come.
Lightning give it up for Menashot, score! A turnover and a tie-breaking goal!
And the Blackhawks take control. There's a shot and a goal.
Welcome in to the Sports Renegades here on SportstownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky. And what a thrilling win it was last night for the Blackhawks, coming back behind from a 1-0 deficit late in the third period, scoring twice to win the game 2-1, including rookie Teuvo Teravainen making his name known as the young rookie, scored the game-tying goal, and then assisted on the game winner to Antoine Vermette. And right now, that trade for Antoine Vermette is looking a lot better than it did when they initially made it.
Oh, yeah,
considering
for sure.
he scored no goals in 20 games, and he's got 3 in the postseason so far, and 2 of them have been huge. He had the double overtime winner in Game 4 against the Ducks, and he had the winner in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup last night. And as you heard in the highlights in our little intro before the show, even though Tampa Bay said Blackhawks fans are not allowed in their stadium, it was pretty loud when you heard both of those goals scored. I mean, probably just as loud as it was when Tampa Bay scored their lone goal back in the first period.
Yeah, there was a lot of fans there. And I mean, from what we could see on the TV, there seemed to be a good amount of fans there anyway.
Yeah, it looked like there was a lot of red, and I was just kind of thinking, to that Tampa Bay team president, how's that strategy of keeping Blackhawks fans out of your stadium
Obviously,
working?
it didn't work because it's sort of like in the first round against Nashville. They had that same issue where,
they're more focused on Blackhawks fans than the actual game.
Yeah, and that, obviously that's not why they lost. But it's the same thing. I mean, these people are afraid because the Blackhawks fans, they come in hordes and in bunches, and they're
allowed to.
They come to support the Hawks.
Yeah, it was at least 30 or 35% Blackhawks fans there last night.
Yeah.
And even Tampa Bay, they said, on StubHub we have the right to cancel orders going to Chicago with no refunds, which, I mean, focus on the game. I mean, what if it wasn't a sellout because they didn't allow Blackhawks fans in? They're like, if we see Blackhawks fans in certain sections, we're going to ask them to leave.
Yeah, that would not be good.
No, and then,
obviously they didn't do that, but
we don't know
strange,
why. Yeah, we don't know if that happened and they moved them to different sections. Except, I think the best part of that whole scenario is Mayor Rahm Emanuel welcoming all Tampa Bay fans to Chicago for the world-class restaurants and hotels and to enjoy the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. I thought that was a classy comment to make, like after Tampa Bay went all out and done saying we don't want the Hawks here and no fans allowed and everything. It's nice that we'll be welcoming them. Although I don't know how many Tampa Bay Lightning fans are going to be traveling up here.
Yeah, no, because it's a small market, and really, if you think about it, I mean, even if there's never opposing fans at the United Center. I mean, you never really see. You
Usually
might see
not.
some. Usually, the only team that really ever successfully invades the United Center is Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I really think that these teams need to just focus on the game because you don't want to be just like in Nashville saying there'll be no national anthem being sang. It'll be the fans singing it because they don't want Blackhawks fans cheering. Like, I mean, just focus on the game. I mean, it's actually a major distraction, and it probably doesn't help that the Cubs are playing the Marlins this week, where you might have some Cubs fans that maybe decided to not go to yesterday's game. They went to the Monday game, and then they just drove down to Tampa Bay for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I don't think Miami and Tampa are too far apart.
Yeah.
It's maybe 3 hours at the most, but
which I mean is pretty worth it considering.
It's not that bad.
Considering how much cheaper Stanley Cup Finals tickets will be on the road in Tampa Bay than they would be here in Chicago.
True.
Like I think I read it just in like the pre-sale, like from the Blackhawks and Ticketmaster. Standing room only was like $650 a ticket.
Yeah, it's not worth it. I'm telling you, it's not worth it unless you have a lot of money. It's really not worth it.
Yeah,
to waste your money on that.
Even if I had,
especially if you're just standing too.
Yeah, if I had a ton of money, I don't know if I'd spend $650 for standing room.
Right, I think I'd spend a little more to sit.
Yeah,
at least row 17 in the 300 level. Or something.
or maybe sit kind of in between the blue line and one of the goals, pay like an extra $200 or $300. I mean, I know it's so awesome being at the game, except if you're at standing room in the very nosebleed of the stadium. I think that if it was standing room or watch the game at home, I'd probably choose watch the game at home unless the standing room was given to me free.
Right.
If it was given to me for free, that's a different story.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. All right, so let's sort of go over the stuff that happened in Game 1. It was a very exciting game. The first period, Tampa Bay came out strong.
Yeah,
and they scored about 5 minutes in to take the 1-0 lead on a really cool shot. It was a really cool goal.
It was.
I mean, I was upset it went in, but I was like, I was impressed.
Except that
by the goal by Alex Killorn.
Yeah, except the funny thing is that's the only puck they were able to get in against Corey Crawford. As you saw,
he was phenomenal.
He might have played one of his best games of the Stanley Cup playoffs this year.
Yeah, he had
23 saves, I believe.
23 saves, yep.
And I mean, really, that
23 saves. He saved 2 power plays as well.
And I mean, as you said, it was a really cool goal. Like, you really don't see a guy backhand like a baseball uppercut swing, like a line shot puck in the air into the net. It was a really cool goal, except when you watch that, it's just kind of like that's the only way they were able to score against Corey Crawford in that game.
Yeah, because I think overall in that first period, the Hawks were outplayed.
They were outplayed for those first 2 periods because they weren't really having good scoring opportunities. The Tampa Bay Lightning played very good defense on Kane and Taves. They weren't allowing them to get open, and Ben Bishop made some pretty big saves. And watching the game, you just kind of felt that this is not the Blackhawks. And you knew, I was just kind of thinking, if they end up losing this game, I know they're going to come out and dominate Game 2 because that's just how the Blackhawks are. They don't play very terribly in 2 straight games, especially in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Right.
And I was just thinking they're going to dominate Game 2, and then the epic comeback to win Game 1.
Yeah, I mean,
now they got momentum going into Game 2, which I think they're going to play a lot better in Game 2. The emotions are in check. They're like, we need to play 60 minutes of hockey. We can't just rely on Corey Crawford to stop every puck again.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely turning into like a must-win for Tampa Bay now. It's especially now that the Hawks won Game 1. Tampa Bay really needs to take one at home, although it's definitely going to be tough because the Hawks have them on the ropes now, and I'm pretty sure Game 2 will be more high-scoring and then not just more high-scoring, but a lot more a lot more activity.
Yeah, there wasn't really that many shots on net for either team. These are 2 teams that should be putting on 30-plus shots a game, and I was just kind of thinking, the only one way that this series ends in 4 or 5 games with the Hawks winning is if Tampa Bay's offense just disappears, which it very well could. I mean, this is a lot of pressure for a lot of young guys because, I know they have some good veterans in Ryan Callahan and Vitteri Filppula, who's a former Detroit Red Wing who won the Stanley Cup with the Red Wings. Steven Stamkos is a 25-year-old captain, which Taves was a captain at 20 years old and winning the Stanley Cup. And it's a lot of pressure, especially when you're playing a team like the Blackhawks that have so much experience, because when the Blackhawks were young and inexperienced and just playing a lot of good hockey, they had some good veterans on the team like Hossa and Brian Campbell and Patrick Sharp, Brent Seabrook, and they're also playing a really young and inexperienced Philadelphia Flyers team.
Yeah, they are.
Where, no one on that Flyers team had won a Stanley Cup And, Tampa Bay doesn't get that luxury of playing another kind of inexperienced young team. They still have a lot of young players, except this is a team that is good enough that they could sweep the Lightning if the Lightning really just kind of falter because of the pressure and they just disappear in the finals. Their goal scorers aren't scoring goals, and the Blackhawks will take advantage of that and eat them alive.
Yeah, they could for sure. Game 2 is going to be crazy, and and obviously we're lucky that the Hawks won this first game because all the scoring happened. The third period was almost over. I think there was about 7 minutes left when Teuvo Teravainen scored the goal. He scored with 13:28 left in the game.
And there's just under 5 minutes left when Antoine Vermette
15:26, Antoine Vermette, and then Teuvo got the assist. And I heard on the radio, and I'm sure you heard this too. He is the youngest player to have to have a goal and an assist in a Stanley Cup game.
In Game 1 of the Stanley Cup on the road.
Yeah, in Game 1 in like 25 years or something. I don't know what the exact thing was, but yeah, he definitely played really well. And of course, he had that awesome goal, and then he had the assist on the Antoine Vermette goal, and that really was the difference pretty much, and that's why he was the number one star of the game, obviously, and of course Corey Crawford and then Alex Killorn on Tampa Bay with his goal. So, but yeah, it was a really exciting game. I was getting a little worried, of course,
I wasn't
towards
getting
the end of it. But after that goal, I knew the Hawks would somehow find a way to win even in overtime.
I honestly thought it was going to go to overtime. I was just thinking, it's still 1-0. I was like, they're not going to get shut out in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. It just wasn't going to happen. They could get shut out in a later game in the finals. They weren't going to get shut out in Game 1. I wasn't expecting them to score twice in that third period.
No, neither was
except when it happened, I was just kind of like, I am not shocked at all.
Yeah, it's sort of like it almost wasn't surprising.
If they were down 3-0, they probably would have scored 4 goals. I'm not even kidding.
I know. Well, we saw that
the poise,
against Anaheim.
Yeah, the poise and the determination and the experience of this team is what is really going to come down as the determining factor of who wins the Stanley Cup, which will most likely be the Blackhawks, which is just my opinion. If you could just tell once they scored that first goal, they were going to win. They were going to win the game, even if it took overtime, or they were going to score at the end of regulation. Except you could tell it the way they played that third period. They were down 3-0. They would have scored 4 goals, or they would have at least scored 3 and then scored in an overtime period. Except they were determined, and I think that's really going to help them in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Corey Crawford had those saves, and then it was weird because
he stopped Ryan Callahan. Huge save on Ryan Callahan.
That was
on the breakaway.
Yeah, that was right before Teravainen scored.
Yeah, when it was still 1-0, keeping the game a 1-goal game, and then Teuvo scored. And I know Steven Stamkos said before the game he really wants to win the Stanley Cup so bad. He just wants to win it so bad, and I feel bad for him because I personally like Steven Stamkos. I think he's a great player. He's a great guy. He's an amazing goal scorer. And I just feel bad that his first trip to the finals he's facing the Blackhawks, because if they were facing another team, I probably would be rooting for the Lightning just because I like Stamkos. Except, I don't think he's going to win.
Right.
I feel bad for him, except, hey, maybe he'll be willing to take a massive pay discount in his next big contract.
And play with the team that
play with the
team that beat him, yeah.
Or give them an opportunity to shed some salary cap and sign him. That would solve a lot of problems. I don't think it'll happen because the Blackhawks have other needs, and as you saw, the second line center position really hasn't been an issue this year because of Brad Richards. He didn't play. He didn't play like an amazing player. He played really well. He won faceoffs, played good defense, set up Kane and Saad and Sharp or whoever he was with. He played really well, and it helped that that New York bought out his contract where he didn't have to take a lot of money. He was a pretty cheap signing at 1 year, $2 million. And he scored a couple or 12